The Calgary Flames are in an interesting position to say the least. They have a big decision to make, and it will not be easy to hopefully take one side of this debate. With free agency right around the corner, the Flames could pick up some really good players that could help them make the playoffs next season, but to make the tougher decision, they might have to fully commit to a rebuild to ensure that the future is more promising. We will look at all of that and comparisons and more in this video, but first, I wanted to welcome you to Flames Digest. I'm Mark Griffith. If you're new around here and you love the Flames, make sure you subscribe because only about 20% of the people watching are subscribed. So if you want to stay up to date on all the latest news, updates, reports, and rumors revolving around your Calgary Flames, then make sure you join the fastest growing community of Flames fans on the internet. We would love to welcome you to the Flames Digest family. We have a lovely community here where everyone talks about their opinions and it's super fun. Make sure you get involved down in the comments below. But let's talk about the decision. Ooh, sounds really epic, really. Kind of sounds like the LeBron James, the decision when he was leaving the Cleveland Cavaliers back in the day. The decision to go to the Miami Heat. We're not talking about basketball yet in this video. Actually, will be later, believe it or not. But right now, we're talking about the decision of what the Flames need to do in this offseason and for the future. Now, it's always a tough decision. It's not an easy decision to commit to a rebuild and invest in your youth and your future. The integrity of the game is to always try your hardest and make the playoffs. And going into the offseason, the Flames' coaches, management, and players all said, look, it sucks that we didn't make the playoffs this season. Vibes are still high going into this offseason, but we want to make the playoffs next year. And while that's great, that's the professional thing to do, it's not an easy decision to kind of accept that maybe, just maybe, not necessarily tanking, but losing honestly might be the path the Flames need to take in order to really see out this rebuild and ensure that they will be strong contenders in the future instead of just being, another bubble team of mediocrity, the mushy middle again. Sign some players this year that could help them make the playoffs in a bit of a weaker Pacific Division. But that's not what the fans want. I'm sure that's not what the players want. I think a lot of people would be fine if maybe, just maybe a couple seasons, they aren't great. They trade away all of their best players for future assets, and it could build them into a very good contender. Now, let's take a look at an article here that was written today by Gurpal Singh. So, youth still a priority for Flames' general manager, Craig Conroy. In a season filled with ups and downs for the Calgary Flames, one major positive has to be the establishment of a new youth movement. Flames general manager Craig Conroy made it clear in his introductory press conference that bringing in younger players was going to be the main focus for the team moving forward. And that is great. That is exactly what he said he was going to do and then did it. He traded away Lindholm, Hanifin, Tanev, Zadorov, Toffoli, etc. and ensured that he brought in younger players and gave younger players a chance to play this season. We saw Dustin Wolf come up. We saw Coronado, Pelche. We saw Pospisil and Zary grab roster spots, which was great. They'll for sure be on the team next year. Even other guys, Cole Schwint, Solovyov. We saw Yan Kuznetsov a little bit. Some younger guys really getting a chance, and that is great. That is a great way to build the foundation of a contender. Now let's continue the article here. Flames looking to follow similar youth models. Within the chain of season-ending interviews, Conroy indicated his interest in utilizing youth models used by other teams in the league. Conroy mentioned the strategies used by the Dallas Stars and the Montreal Canadiens. Both of these teams have made it a priority to introduce youth alongside veteran presence. Montreal is still in the middle of their rebuild, they're early on, with great promise for the future through their young players. However, Dallas, on the other hand, has been a consistent playoff team for some time now and has begun to enter the category of being a cup contender. And Conroy said this a while ago now that he wants to follow the Dallas model, but it is almost the ideal model to follow in the NHL right now. Through the draft, in just 1 year, they drafted Heiskanen, they drafted Jason Robertson, and they drafted Jake Ottinger. They really ensured that, they knew they were going to have maybe a bad season or two here, ensuring that they get some really good players, trade away some of the big contracts, and get some assets, and it has worked out great for them. They made the Stanley Cup final a few years ago. Flames fans know we've played them in the playoffs. They're in the playoffs right now in a sticky one against Vegas, but they're playing really well. It is a great model to follow because they do have the veteran presence around of, Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin, and it works. Montreal's early on in theirs, but holy, do they ever have a lot of potential with some of these younger players if they could just stay healthy. Let's continue the article here. Flames may look to move assets for more youth, do even more of what they did this season, continue it on. Conroy also mentioned Montreal and their history of acquiring young talent for assets. The Canadiens traded the 13th pick to Chicago in exchange for centerman Kirby Dach during the 2022 draft. Conroy mentioned his desire to acquire young players by potentially using assets such as draft picks to do so. The Flames will have 2 first-round picks in 2024, including Vancouver's first, which they received from the Elias Lindholm trade. That pick will be in the late first round, and Calgary could utilize it to acquire a young player to make an immediate impact on their roster. It's an interesting strategy that could be a possibility if the Flames do, in fact, want to be competitive next season. So that's kind of showing the other side of this big decision that they could make. Look, they have a lot of draft capital. They've got some good prospects now. They could trade away some of that, use some of their cap space as well, sign a free agent, or trade for a good player, and guess what? They could push for the playoffs next season. But that wouldn't mean that they're bona fide contenders. That's what we need to go for here. I think most Flames fans would agree with that. As much as it sucks watching your team lose, we've seen it work for some teams in the past. We'll get into that in the next chapter of this video, but let's wrap up this article first. Making smart draft selections will be crucial if they do and choose to invest in the youth here. Despite all the talk about the Flames and their retooling, all of it will be pointless if the Flames don't draft smartly. In order to follow a model similar to a team like Dallas, hitting on their draft picks is an absolute must for long-term success. Addressing positions of need and finding players that fit the Flames' identity and style the most is key to creating a successful youth movement. The youth movement is working so far. We've seen Connor Zary come up, Pospisil, Coronado should be really good, and some of these other guys, Dustin Wolf, of course. But they also need to make sure that they hit on some of these draft picks because the Flames, I don't want to say are notorious for bad draft picks, but wow, some of their highest draft picks in their entire history have been quite shocking, to say the least. The Flames really do need to make sure that they hit on this, or else this rebuild will be for nothing, and it could go like some other teams. Now, with that being said, let's get into some different kind of comparisons here. The reason I say different is because I'm going to start by saying the obvious hockey ones, the obvious NHL ones that we always talk about. Look at a successful youth movement model. Look at the Chicago Blackhawks. They drafted Jonathan Toews, then Patrick Kane. They had some veteran presence behind them, and look, they went on to win 3 Stanley Cups in 6 years. Great model. Look at the Pittsburgh Penguins. They drafted a plethora of people, really. Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang, Marc-Andre Fleury. They drafted all of them high, kind of got rid of some of their other older players and ensured that they had a great team around those young guys, built them up, and guess what? They won the Cup in 2009, continued to develop these players, kind of went through not a rebuild, but just some great years, and then retooled a bit to grab some other good players, and guess what? They won the Cups in 2016 and 2017 as well. Great models to follow. There's bad ones as well. We always talk about the Buffalo Sabres and the Ottawa Senators. They have been rebuilding for what seems like forever. It hasn't worked for either of them yet. But the ones I want to focus on are rebuilds from other sports. If you're not a huge sports nut and you don't know a ton about other big leagues in North America of the Big Four, then I'm sorry about this. I'll try and make the comparisons the best I can. But the one the Flames really should follow and need to follow is the current Oklahoma City Thunder. If you don't pay attention to the NBA and basketball, pretty much what the Thunder did is a full reset. They were a great team in the 2010s. They couldn't quite win a championship, but they had some great players. What did they do with these great players once they knew they weren't going to win? Well, they traded them away for future assets. And I'm not talking, just a few players. They threw away everyone. It kind of started, Kevin Durant went away, but they had some great players. Russell Westbrook, Paul George, traded them away, grabbed one of the best players in the NBA now in SGA, Canadian Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, absolutely incredible player, and now they are dominating. This rebuild only took approximately 3 years, we can say, where they just gave away everything, tanked, got some great draft picks, made some amazing trades with all of the assets they got from the older veteran players they traded away, and now they are elite. They finished top of the Western Conference. They just swept the first round of the playoffs. They look insane. The Flames need to do this. Now, one they need to avoid, if you're a big football fan, you probably saw this coming anyway, but it is the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns have been pretty much terrible for my entire life. They are just abysmal, and they have not done rebuilding correctly. They have had so many high draft picks, so many number 1 overall picks, and they never do what is right. So this kind of proves that rebuilding doesn't always work. You can, trade away some of your better players, get those high draft picks. You can tank, but if you don't hit on those drafts, it doesn't work at all. The Cleveland Browns have been proving this for a while. I know they've made the playoffs a few times over the past 5 or so years, but they really haven't gone far at all in the playoffs. I know they're in a tough division in the AFC North, but it is difficult. The Flames do not want to be the Cleveland Browns. They want to be the Oklahoma City Thunder. I know I could have used an example of a team that actually has won a championship, but just wait. I think the Thunder within the next few years will definitely win at least a title or two. They've got first overall picks. They've got great other young players. They're building them up within the organization, developing them, and they are incredible. So I know it's not an easy decision for the Flames to say, let's embrace a rebuild. But look, the Flames have tried everything else in terms of trying to stay competitive and being in mediocrity, and it has not worked. Now's the time to rebuild, try and be a contender by the time the Flames get the new arena, and everything will be golden. Now let's wrap up this video with everyone's favorite part of the day. The comment of the day, and it goes with the Steven Stamkos video from yesterday, but it also goes with, this video as well, saying, look, it might be an easier choice to sign some free agents that could be really good and help the Flames contend. Let's make the playoffs next year, but it might not be in the Flames' best interest. So this one comes from Derek D'Angelo. It would be cool to have a prolific player like Stamkos in the Flaming Sea, but I don't think it makes sense for him or the team. Stamkos likely won't play in a Canadian market. Weather, tax, and dollar parity are main issues. For the Flames, it's time to build a roster from within and smart signings. Calgary seems to have never scouted well, but we need that to change with all the picks we are getting. It should be a rebuild era now. If that doesn't just completely encompass yesterday's video and this video you're watching right now, I don't know what does. It really shows, look, they could make some big signings here. They might not make the most sense at all, but they could make the playoffs, but that is not the point here. Let's really rebuild, not just call it retooling. Let's call it a rebuild. Totally commit to that, and the Flames can be very good in the future. Thank you so much for that comment. I couldn't have picked a clearer one. Also, I want to thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe if you like what you saw here today, and have a wonderful rest of your day.